everybody. This is Steve Kemp with the People Not Titles podcast, and I'm so happy here to be with Paul Barker in his house of pain, where he makes it all happen. This is where he stays physically fit and ready for the daily challenges. Paul is once a Marine, always a Marine.
That is
so
correct.
You are a Marine. And so we're going to get into Paul's military background, and we're also going to get into Paul's career in real estate. So Paul, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks
Glad
for having
to have
me.
you. So Paul, let's just get right into it. What had you entering into the Marines? Why do you want to become a Marine?
There's several different things. I was a very good student in high school, but I didn't have to try very hard.
Grew up in Chicago?
I did not. I grew up on the East Coast in Maryland.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I'm a transplant. But near my senior year, I realized that my lack of work ethic in high school was not going to translate well into college. And I came from a small town, didn't see very much, and I just wanted something different than 4 more years of school. It was the late 90s, the world was at peace. I thought 4 years in the Marine Corps, get some money for college, and I'd be good to go. So that was one motivating factor. The reason I chose the Marine Corps over the others is between my junior and senior years of high school, I went to a statewide boys camp, and it was run by Marine Corps recruiters. And I really liked their discipline, their attitude, and their bearing, so decided on the Marine Corps.
So did you, until late in your high school career, were you thinking about military service at all?
I knew I didn't want to go to college right away.
Okay.
I was either going to go into a trade for a couple years or the military, but it was that summer between my junior and senior years that really solidified that I wanted to join the military.
So you entered into the Marines when you were 18 years old?
I did. I had enough credits to graduate high school a semester early. So I actually went to boot camp in early March while all the rest of my friends were still finishing their senior year of high school.
And how'd that land with you, boot camp? Was it a rude awakening? Were you ready for it?
I don't think you can be fully aware of what's coming at you.
Yeah.
But I'm a very avid reader, and I research, not in a studious way research, but I just read a lot about things
You're
I'm
curious?
interested in. Yeah, so I read a lot of books about the Marine Corps, a lot of books about how boot camp would be. So none of it was a surprise. The intensity is what got me and what shocked me, and the amount of how much your life was controlled during those 3 months.
Okay, and where'd you go to boot camp?
Parris Island, South Carolina.
Okay, all
Yes,
right.
where real Marines are made.
That's great. All right, you came out of that, and then what? You came out of boot camp, and then what was the next phase of Marine service?
So boot camp's a little different from the Army. The Army will send you to boot camp in different locations based upon what your MLS, your military occupational specialty, will be. The Marine Corps sends all of its Marines to either Parris Island or San Diego for basic Marine training. Every Marine gets the same 3 months of basic Marine training. After that, they ship you off to your specialty school. So I was an infantryman, so then I went to North Carolina for 7 weeks of infantry training at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
Okay.
Then after that, it was off to my first duty station, which was Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii, which is where I was stationed from 98 to 2002.
And you wound up staying in the Marines for 15 years, right?
It was 15 cumulative years, yes.
Okay.
I was still planning on getting out of the Marine Corps on September 1st, 2001. 9/11 happened. I was a senior sergeant, so I probably would not have gotten stop loss. They probably would have let me separate because they needed younger, lower ranks at that time. However, my mentality was, well, I've just spent 4 years training for this exact scenario, so let's put that training to good use. Let me not take 4 years of the Marine Corps investing in me and then just separate at the time when the Marine Corps is going to need me. So I re-enlisted for another 4 years, and
Did they put a big heavy pitch on?
no, they didn't.
Wow.
They didn't have to.
Yeah. Thank you.
So the Marine Corps, so the way the Marine Corps works is we're always on deployment rotations, and we had just gotten back from a deployment from Okinawa, and anyone who was getting out of the Marine Corps in the next 6 months they kind of take responsibilities away from you because they want the younger guys to step into those roles because it's assumed that you're leaving the Marine Corps. So I had stepped away from my platoon duties, and I was doing out processing things like readjusting to civilian life classes, and this is how you apply for jobs, this is how you write a resume, this is where you could potentially apply to school, this is how you utilize your GI benefits. I was doing those things when 9/11 hit. So.
And where were you the day?
I was in Hawaii. It was 5:30 in the morning, and actually my mom is the one who told me that 9/11 was happening because she called me almost right after the first plane hit the tower. She called and woke me up. And I turned on the news and watched it, and I quickly realized what was happening. And I'm on the phone with her. I said, I have to go. And as soon as I hung up the phone with her, the alarms started going off on base, and everyone was up, stand to, went to the armory, grabbed our weapons, and no one knew what was happening. So we went to our designated guard posts on base, and we stood up guard just to make sure, just because no one knew.
Yeah.
But then within the next couple of days, I walked into the, he's called the career retention specialist. He's the guy who re-enlists people. I just walked in and said, hey, I'm going to re-enlist.
Wow. Didn't take you long to think about it.
Didn't take me long to think about it. I re-enlisted, but then they sent me to Quantico, Virginia to train officers, so
Okay.
that's where I went next.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how'd you finish out your career in the Marines?
So I went to Quantico. I was a combat instructor. I was a machine gunner when I was in Hawaii. So I trained young officers on machine guns at the basic school, which is where all the officers go. And then I went to Iraq in 2014, right after the initial push. And the thought was to take a bunch of instructors from around the country and train the new Iraqi army. And that had limited success, but we were there for 7 months doing that. When I got back to Quantico after that deployment to Iraq, I went to the infantry officers course, which is additional infantry training for infantry officers, and finished out my active duty there. Separated from the Marine Corps in 2006. I was out for 2 years before I realized I don't want to be out. And then so I went back in middle of 2008, and then finished my career in the reserves up in Milwaukee after I moved up here in, I guess it was mid-2014. So you count up all the years from 98 to mid-14, it's about 15 years is what I total time I did.
Okay, there was one version of Paul Barker that went into the Marines and another version that came out, right? Maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe it brought something out of you. What was the biggest? Yeah. What was it? What would you say has changed? What clicked? What was, what'd you come away with that you still have today?
The biggest thing, and it's kind of the reason why I didn't want to go to college right away out of high school, is that if things didn't interest me, I would not apply myself at them, even if I should have. Even if it was necessary to be successful or necessary to meet a certain goal. If it didn't interest me, I would just do enough to get by, and I wouldn't fully apply myself. The Marine Corps taught me that even if you don't want to do it, but it's important, you need to apply the same amount of discipline to it and time to it and attention to it as the things you enjoy doing. That was number one. The second thing is the ability to finish what I start is the other big one, and the last one was probably attention to detail. That's a huge one. It's not just concepts. You have to be able to identify where certain problems could come up and have a plan to circumvent that before it even gets to you. So if it does land in your lap, it's not a big deal because you already have a contingency for it.
So there are certain elements of everything you do that you don't necessarily like, aren't interested in, but the Marines taught you need to do well at those too.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're going to do something, do it to the best of your ability, even if you don't enjoy doing it.
So are there any low points for you? Loneliness, whatever.
Yeah, but again, nothing was a surprise to me.
You miss family events.
Of course I did, and it's actually the reason I got out the second time before hitting my 20-year retirement is because my wife and I just got married and we were talking about starting a family. I had known friends who had missed births and birthdays, and I said, I'm just not going to do that. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Life
So I
choice.
it was a life choice. But I mean, there's the typical loneliness, but I feel I adjusted fairly quickly and fairly well to military life. And on the flip side, I feel like I've adjusted quickly and well to civilian life again.
Yeah.
And some people can't and don't have the ability to, but I've gotten pretty good at, you know, being able to separate, you know, Staff Sergeant Barker from Paul Barker.
Yeah.
And I think being in the reserves near the end of my career helped, because I'd have to turn it on for 4 days on a drill weekend or 2 weeks in the summer, and then turn it back off when I got home.
Get plugged into.
Yeah,
whatever.
you go from being a military leader who's yelling at privates, and then you come back into the office and you can't yell at the staff for screwing
Doesn't
something
work.
up. It doesn't work that way. So yeah, I'm fortunate. I think there's no rhyme or reason why some people can adjust and some can't. But it hasn't been a detriment.
Do you still are you still actively engaging with veterans at all?
Not as much as I should probably. Once or twice a year, I'll go up to Wisconsin or down to Indiana and help build houses for Homes for Our Troops.
Okay.
And we donate to them every year too. There's not a lot of veterans in our industry, and I'd say Chicago's not a huge hub for veterans.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, except for maybe the Navy, but you know, I haven't been that very involved. My last unit was out of Milwaukee, so most of those guys lived up in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I went up to Milwaukee because I was a senior rank, and when you pick up enough rank, they kind of tell you where you have to go and do your reserve drill, because they only have certain positions for that rank. So I mean, I keep in touch with those guys occasionally, but it's been a while since I've sat down and got together with them.
So when you meet a veteran, regardless of the branch, is there something that you kind of assume about them? Is there some kind of common thread that you see in veterans?
Not veterans as a whole.
Okay.
I'd say Marine Corps veterans, yes.
Yeah. Okay, and what is it?
Marine Corps veterans tend to be a little more self-confident and cocky.
Okay.
Sometimes it can be a detriment.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're assholes.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah.
I've been guilty of that myself occasionally. But we have done, except for some of the special forces training that's out there, and that is 0.1% of the military veterans, the special forces guys. The Marine Corps guys and girls have done some of the hardest things that are asked of young people out there,
And came through it. Yeah.
That's a huge boost on confidence and your self image of your ability to just get things done if you have to get them done, and that shows.
Yeah.
And that shows.
So when you meet another Marine, you know what they went through at least to get that.
Absolutely.
Through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's common respect and common language. And
Yeah. And I'm not disparaging.
Fraternity.
I'm not disparaging the other services, but because we all have our role to play. But you know, as I was speaking about the Army, it depends on what job you have, is what kind of training you get.
Sure.
Okay. You know, the Air Force is the same thing. Depending on your job, depends on what kind of basic training you have. Whereas every Marine's a rifleman, so I know that every Marine did 3 months of boot camp, and then did some portion of infantry training before they even started doing what their specialty was.
Yeah.
Because the Marine Corps has computer techs and radio operators and pilots.
Yeah.
But everybody does 3 months of boot camp, and they change the infantry training. Sometimes it's 4 weeks, sometimes it's 5 weeks, 3 weeks, just based on the needs of the Marine Corps. Everybody's done that before they move on to something else.
All right, so you get out of the Marines, you start a family, you settle in Chicago, and how do you get into real estate?
Well, so two things. The first is in 2012, I was still in the reserves. I was living in Chicago actually I was not living in the same building as my brother at the time. My brother was living in a 3-flat, actually just around the corner from here, and his landlord knocked on his door and said, do you want to buy the place? He and his wife had lived there for 4 or 5 years. He said sure, but had no idea how to go about the process. She, being the landlord, didn't want to get real estate agents involved because she didn't want to pay a commission. So I started researching with him how we could do it. We had no money. Well, that's not true. We didn't have very much money. We knew we could not qualify for a loan to purchase the property from her outright. So I started looking into, like lease back from her, or
Contract for deed or whatever.
yeah, things like that.
Yeah.
So what we ended up doing is we gave her a down payment. So we set a purchase price, and then we gave her a portion of that, and then we paid her interest only on the balance, with a balloon payment of the entire balance due no later than 5 years from whatever date it was in 2012.
Yep.
Okay. And what we essentially, we used 2 attorneys, and I think we had a land lease deal, I think is what it officially was, a land lease deal, but we were permitted to do work to the property and improve the property and these kind of things. So I actually moved into one of the units. He and his wife were living in another unit. So essentially we rented out the 3rd unit, and our lease payment to her, we got the bill every month. We took the rent from the other unit, we applied it to our interest payments to her, and then split the difference, all right? And then we both improved our units to however we wanted to. So I worked on mine, he worked on his. And then we got it appraised about a year later, and we're like, oh my, we made out fantastic.
Wow.
So we were actually able to refinance that, I think within 2 years. We just kind of
Paid her off.
Yep. It was done, and then we had a mortgage on this place. I then deployed, and this was right after Aaron and I got married. So this was 2013, I guess, early 2013. I deployed for my last time. And when I was deploying, I said, look, here's how much money I put in. Here's how much money I've improved the place. Why don't you, let's talk to my brother, why don't you give me that money and it's yours, type of thing. So, because my wife and I aren't going to live there in the same building. And honestly, from a business perspective, it doesn't make sense for 2 owners to be living in the building.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to be generating more rent. So he gave me a chunk of money back, bought me out, and that was it for real estate for me. I deployed, came back, said, I don't want to deploy again.
What am I going to do now?
Married.
Yeah.
Let me give real estate a shot.
Wow.
All right, so I got my leasing license first, and my goal was to be a leasing agent for a year, and then if I enjoyed it, transition into brokerage. I did leasing for 6 weeks, and was like, okay.
You see all the other deals flying around.
Well,
like, I want a piece of that.
I was working in a rental office, and within a week I was doing more deals than most people in there, and I wasn't making any money. And I was like, something's
wrong with this picture?
Yeah, something's wrong with this. So I went to the Baird & Warner 2-week course.
Okay.
80 hours.
Did you interview brokerages, or you just walked right into the Baird & Warner?
I just walked right into the Baird & Warner office.
Dave?
It was not Dave at the time. It was Bill Stegman.
Okay. Yeah.
So I walked in with Bill, signed me up, and I was off. And that was January 14. So I started as a leasing agent in October of 13, and then 3 months later I was done with that and started my brokerage career.
And was it a full-time career for you, like
from the start?
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that important for you?
Yeah, I don't half-ass anything. If I'm
Okay.
going to go in, I'm going to give it. So the way I looked at it is, if I start this part-time, I won't know, even 3 years from now, I won't know if I can be successful at it because I'm doing it part-time. So I went all in. Luckily, we had no children. My wife was working as a teacher. I had a nice chunk of money from my previous deployment that I had just gotten back from.
So you had a little run room.
We had some room, yeah. And she kept us afloat for a year and a half, and then when we got pregnant with Ava, my career was just taking off. It worked out perfectly. She put in her maternity leave and just never went back.
So you never did any sales before then?
No, I didn't, and I don't anymore. I still don't do sales.
Okay.
I don't like to refer to real estate. I don't think good real estate agents consider themselves salespeople.
Okay.
Okay. We are counselors and advisors.
Great.
We are marketing consultants. I'd say we're that. Salespeople convince other people to purchase things. You don't convince people to buy a house. People either want to buy a house or they don't. You, if you're a good agent, can help them get to what they want.
So learn what they want and help them get what they want.
Yeah.
Okay, so the tough thing about real estate sales in general is that you there's a scorecard, and that is your check.
Yeah.
Right? You can say, hey, I'm doing really good, but if you aren't making the money, you aren't doing real good. So how long did it take you to know I can do this?
My second year.
Okay.
My second year. I doubled my volume in my second year, and then my third year I more than doubled it. And my third year in real estate, let me think. I think probably because I was a military guy for the whole time. I think my second year in real estate I made more money that year than I ever made in my life. So.
Okay. And was there ever a time where you thought in your first year this isn't going to work out?
No, because because I had the cushion, because my wife was working, my first 4-6 months were spent learning and setting up the systems I thought would be successful to get clients and be successful with clients. So I wasn't, first 6 months I didn't sell anything, but I wasn't worried, okay? And then, so all the money I made in my first year was made in the second half of the year, okay? And if I look at it that way, I probably, in that 6 months, I made as much as I made in the first 6 months and the second 6 months of the following year, but it was systems that were ramping up. So, and I told myself I'd give myself 2 years to give it a shot, and by the end of the second year, it was.
You knew this was what you wanted to do.
Yeah, it was clear that it was. Look, no one's shooting at me. I sleep in my bed. I sleep in my bed, my own bed, every single night. Yeah. I am never. I don't have to travel for business meetings. I don't have to travel to go to sales calls. Yeah, we work long hours, but I know where I'm sleeping every single night, which is nice.
Yeah, and you have some freedom.
You do. I'd say we work a lot of hours, but very rarely does something have to happen right now. So if Ava's soccer game is at 4 o'clock today, almost anything that could get scheduled at 4 o'clock can go 2 hours earlier, 2 hours later, or tomorrow. Almost everything. There's some things that can't, but for those things, you have a colleague step in and cover for you. It's easy.
Okay, so for a young person that's starting out in real estate per se, what's important? What would you say if you had to coach them and tell them? What would you say?
First of all, know what you're getting into, okay? Don't think that it's just sit down at a desk and the phone will start ringing and floor calls will start coming in and you'll get clients left, right, and sideways, okay? Floor calls don't happen anymore. Hardly anybody calls a real estate office and says, hey, I'm looking for a real estate agent. Because everybody knows somebody, and everyone's gotten mail or everyone's gotten phone calls, okay? So that doesn't happen. Do your research and have a plan, have a good prospecting plan for how you're going to try to find buyer clients and how you're going to try to find seller clients. Stick with that plan for 6 or 8 months, make adjustments and tweak it. But don't get caught up in the hundreds and hundreds of unsolicited advice that you're going to get thrown your way from marketers, from real estate gurus, from other agents who say, try this worked for me. Great, it worked for that person. Maybe it's not going to work for you. So, you know, identify what you're strong at, what you feel you're comfortable with, and use that to try to find sellers. And same thing with buyers. Use that to try to find buyers. You know, I mean, if you're not from the area like I'm not, I sat 2 open houses a weekend for my first 3 years. That's how I found buyers. If you've lived here your entire life, get on the phone and talk to people that are about to buy a house, or you think are about to buy a house, or know people who might be a house and buy a house.
So that's really interesting, because Chicago is really a hometown place in the sense of there's a lot of pride. I've been here and all that. So it's really interesting that you were able to establish a successful real estate career, and you weren't from here.
Yeah, I did. Well,
you seem like a Chicagoan, by the way.
Well, I had lived here so I moved here in 09.
So you can speak the Chicago language.
Yeah, I picked up the accent a little bit.
Yeah.
But I lived here for 4 years before, almost 5 years before I got into real estate. And actually, one thing that really helped me know the city is when I was going to college, I had a big pickup truck and a trailer, and I made money moving college kids from University of Chicago up north, and from UIC all over the place.
So you got to know the area.
I got to know the city.
Yeah.
Just driving people around, moving stuff around.
How important were mentors when you first began?
I'm going to give the wrong answer here.
It's okay.
Yeah. They weren't very important for me.
Okay.
And the reason is because I was 34.
Yeah, you had your share of mentoring.
Yeah, so I was 34 when I started. And I had been through more things than most 50-year-olds at that point. Yeah. So I have a pretty clear snapshot in my head of the types of things I need to be doing. Now, I always ask for advice.
Yeah.
Hey.
And you're a learner.
Yeah. What do you advise in this situation? What do you advise? This. Okay. Great. Thanks. But I don't need a mentor to tell me, hey, you need to dedicate this amount of time to
Did you make your 6 calls a day?
Right.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Okay. That's coaching. So you're not. Coaching is important, but did you ever subscribe to any coaching at all? Real estate coaching? Okay.
I never did.
You were your own coach.
I don't like people telling me what to do.
Yeah. Okay.
That's essentially how I feel.
And maybe you don't need it.
It's not cockiness. It's I know who I am.
Sure.
But I also know when I screw up, and I know when to ask for help.
Yeah.
But I don't need somebody to motivate me to do what I need to do.
That's great.
I know what there is, and I just need to do it. Well, I got 3 reasons in the house. That's why I do what I need to do.
I love it.
Yeah.
So what does your business look like right now, Paul? What your team or whatever your structure, that kind of thing.
So that is, actually glad you brought that up. So the biggest my team has been was in my 4th year. I had myself, 2 agents, and a full-time administrative assistant working together. Okay.
These were 2 buyers agents or 2 agents?
No, so I actually do it a little differently. I work with all my buyers. Okay. I feel that relationships are built much stronger, and lasting relationships are built with buyers rather than sellers, because you're
a lot more interaction.
A ton more.
You're
seeing 30 houses. Dream. Yeah. Exactly. So it's a time suck, but I'm okay with that because most of my referrals come from past buyer clients. Okay, sellers, and it's not like I'm not trying to build a relationship with my seller, but you probably see your seller 3 times. You see him on the initial meeting. You see him maybe a second time if you come back to sign paperwork or shoot photos.
Yeah.
And then you might see him one more time at final walkthrough or at an inspection or something like that. And then it's over. And so many of the people that I'm working with as sellers on the...
You work with as buyers.
Well, that's one. Yeah. But I'm even the first time, even people who reached me through my prospecting were sellers who are selling that $400,000 to $800,000 condo here in the city, which is our bread and butter, my bread and butter. A lot of them are in the suburbs. Okay, so I'll have a relationship with them to selling. 1 in 3, I'll help them buy a place in the suburbs, but the other 2, they've either already bought their house or they want to use a suburban agent out there, which I completely understand. And so that relationship is severed immediately when they move away. Okay, so the 2 agents I was using were actually showing agents for my listings. And the way we worked it was, whichever agent was on deck, all right, whoever was next due to co-list with me, would go to the listing appointment with me. They'd meet the seller. We'd talk about how we were going to do business. We'd sign the paperwork, and then that agent took over from there when it came to getting photos taken, getting the listing ready to go on the market. I'd review the listing, I'd review the market, I'd put it on. That agent was then in charge of all the showings and submitting feedback to the sellers. And then I was responsible after each showing reaching out to the buyer's agent to get feedback directly from the buyer's agent. And then every week or so I would do a market update and showing update to the seller, and then I'd negotiate the deal. So they were essentially showing agents. They did almost all of the appointments at the property, and then I was doing the behind the scenes things. Okay, so that would free me up to actually do a better job of analyzing the market, because I'm not, running out 3 times a day for a 15-minute showing, but it's an hour and a half round trip and getting ready and that 3 times. I could be in the office doing my research, doing my market research, talking with our sellers, talking with the buyer's agents on feedback, and doing those things instead of doing the things that are just opening up the door.
So it sounds like you evolved from that, though.
I did.
Okay.
I evolved because the administrative assistant I had was very good. Okay, she set up a plethora of systems that I can just plug things into now. So she essentially worked herself out of a job, but I would have kept her. She was just very intelligent, and she took a great opportunity somewhere else, paying her more than I could.
Right.
And she was off, and it just kind of worked out perfectly.
She set you up nicely.
She set me up nicely, and that was 3-4 years ago, and I'm still using her systems, and it's eliminated the need for a admin assistant. Okay. I also don't use a transaction coordinator. The attorney I use has a fantastic one. Ernie Rose, by the way. So they do a great job of staying on top of things. But even if I didn't have that, I wouldn't want a transaction coordinator, because I feel that I would lose touch of what's happening throughout a deal if I had a coordinator handling all of the minutia, making sure inspections happen, or reading the attorney letters back and forth. Things can kind of get missed, in my opinion. I like being the coordinator because I know what's going on. I can anticipate problems that are coming up and try to get out in front of them if need be.
But these 2 showing agents are still part of your plan?
Just one.
Oh, one.
Just one now.
So, fantastic.
Yes, and that's about finding someone who's hungry and willing to run all over the place. And it's actually, we got very busy this year, and I've had the conversation with her. I said, it's just you until you tell me you need help. Okay? Because the way I compensate is a percentage of commission for my listings. Okay? So that means if there's 2 of them, then I'm
less.
taking half the listings from Sally and giving them to the new person, and she's working less because she's got less listings she's responsible for, but she has the potential to earn less as well. So it's on her. And
when you're full, we can move on to a second one.
Exactly. And I've told her I want her to start doing so much of her own business that she comes to me and says, I can't take this workload on anymore.
That's great.
And that'd be great for her.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
Yep.
Okay, so what's the goal next 5 years for the Barker team?
I will probably just keep adding. I think we'll probably add one more full-time showing agent, and then might have to go back into not a transaction coordinator, but just like an administrative assistant. If we need a second showing agent, that means we're doing probably 60 to 70 deals a year, and I probably won't be able to keep up with that much paperwork on my own. So then there would be someone to come in to do that, and it's probably actually going to be my wife, Erin. We've already started talking about that. She actually helped me out with it a little bit now. We had planned on starting it this year, but the kids are home all day, so.
How old are your kids,
Paul? Ian's going to be 4 in December. Ava just turned 5.
And so how are you guys doing during this time, just this last 6 months?
I think we made a smart decision by opting out of CPS kindergarten, the distance learning from the beginning. We're lucky. My wife used to be a teacher, as I mentioned, so she ordered an actual homeschooling curriculum. She's actually up there right now doing it.
Wow,
running them through
fantastic.
it. And it's great. Ava's hitting all the benchmarks she should be, and she's doing it in 2 or 3 hours a day. And we're talking to other CPS parents, friends of ours, and the way they're running it is, and it's tough. I'm not bashing anybody, but it's tough.
Yeah.
It's about 6 hours. It's 3 hours of, it's an hour of, video calls with teachers 3 times spaced out throughout the day, and then an hour of work afterwards. So that's a lot of time. That's a lot of time that's invested, and Aaron's able to do it in half or a third of the time with the kids. So it's good.
That's awesome. Is there any process that you've adopted in these last 6 months that you're going to keep?
I thought we were going to make some changes that would be permanent. I think so. When the initial shutdown happened, it was like, okay, every listing's going on a lockbox. No more agents are going to be showing properties. We're going to screen these buyers closely, and if they're interested, we give them the code. We give their agent a code, and in they go. That went away by May.
Yeah.
That was everyone's like, okay, wear a mask,
Yeah.
stay 6 feet away, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
The only thing I think we'll keep together is we're screening potential buyers a little closer before just talking
around,
before just saying yes to the agent. We'll do the showing.
Okay.
We're making sure they're financially qualified. Number one.
Before you're letting them in the home and run around in this and
Correct.
that. Okay.
If the home has a quirk to it, we make sure that we bring that up to the buyer's agent and say, look, this house doesn't have a garage and it's a landlocked and there's no ability to put a garage on it. Is your buyer aware of that, and do they still want to see the home? Yes. Okay, great. Oh no, they don't. They wanted to put a garage on. Well, they can't do it here, so let's not waste everybody's time and potential exposure getting 4 people in the house together.
All right. So wrapping up, Paul. How do you distinguish yourself from? I mean, there's thousands of agents in Chicagoland. How do you separate yourself from all the noise?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I don't have a stellar answer for you.
Okay.
I think it's more just slow and steady. Say what you're going to do and do what you say. Meet people's expectations and march forward.
Yeah. Those are harder than the tricks and gimmicks, aren't they?
They are, and that's another thing for young agents is there's no quick fix to this. There's no quick to the top.
Yeah.
It's a lot of hard work. There's no aha. It's you put in the work, you put in the work, you put in the work, and then in year 3, 4, and 5, it starts paying big dividends. Now you can make a living not putting in very much work, but it's not going to be a great one.
Right.
And you're going to be stressed out a lot. But if you put in the work on the front end, put in more work than you have to, and then as things start ramping up, you can start scaling back and figuring out, where can I cut my time?
I love that.
What have I been overdoing that I can now take that time back for myself?
Yeah, as a young salesperson, you want to oversteer on overdoing it.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what works yet or what you're good at.
Right.
So do as much of it as you can.
Right, and realize that there's tons of competition out there. And if you don't get the listing or you don't get the buyer, don't beat yourself up about it, and don't beat them up about it either.
Right. Just
say, hey, if it doesn't work out, I'm happy to help you, and just move on to the next one.
Yeah, not emotional.
Yeah, you just gotta move on. Do as much as you can to change the things you can change. If you can't change something, forget about it and just move it on. Move on to something else.
Well, so Paul, I want to thank you. I see how you just have a great sowing and reaping mentality.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
It's just put more seeds in the ground, you'll get more crops. That's it.
All right.
That's it.
Well, signing off, people not titles, I just want to say thank you to Marine and real estate broker Paul Barker. Thanks a lot, Paul.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Yeah, thank you.
Yep.